Welcome everyone to your bubble of wellness through science, cultivating a new generation. This space of time and empowered information was designed so that you can have a relaxing adventure with your inner health, understanding its 5 core pillars that also assemble your life. We'll go deep into the science and wellness of nutrition, exercise and metabolism, emotions, consciousness and meditation, and abundance. So relax, enjoy, and keep a student mindset to cultivate your life. Welcome everyone to our episode 20 of the podcast Cultivating a New Generation. In today's episode, we are going to talk about Chapter 2 Life Choices from the book Cultivating a New Generation. Is your emotional background giving you a hard time? How many times do you find yourself replaying old behaviors that you can recognize that come from your parents, but in your case, they just keep sabotaging the direction that you want to take in your life? Did you know that your DNA can be stained by the experiences that you live even when you were in the utero of your mom? All of those questions are going to be answered, and we are going to reflect upon those topics. Let's do a quick recap of our previous chapter from the story of Betty and Mario. We left off with the sudden departure of Betty. When she told Mario she was pregnant and the confusion or shock that Mario had after that, Betty managed to get away from Mario, at least for 2 weeks, by shutting off her cell phone and telling her mother to tell Mario that she was on a job trip. Mario, on the other hand, made many efforts to try to contact her, but he was not successful. Plus, he also needed some thinking to do about what road to take or the different circumstances and consequences of going through with the pregnancy. What was going on in Betty's mind during those weeks off and away from Mario? Well, we know her background and we know she's the more mature in the relationship. Therefore, during those weeks, Betty talked with a very good friend, Karen, who was 5 years older than her and already a mother, so she understood what it was to be pregnant and knows about the incredible joy and happiness that a child can give you, as well as the responsibility involved in the upbringing of a child. Hence, she was her best choice to go for advice. Once they got together, they talked for several hours during different days as Betty was coming out with more and more questions and scenarios to face what was about to come. Karen started explaining to Betty that man's brain is designed to focus more on danger, on possibilities, on threats, and seeing the whole pros and cons of almost every situation, because as we know by history and evolution, men almost in every season have to be the ones that needed to provide food, shelter, and protection for their family. That way of thinking didn't leave too much space for feeling, or sometimes empathy toward any situation different from having resources, food, or commodities for the family. Although nowadays this role is changing, feelings are not the strong side of most men due to patterns, beliefs, and traditions. Even when a modern man can take care of children or the household, it is still not common for them to talk about their feelings, as they were not encouraged to do so since they were children. Actually, this clearly explains why Karen's husband and Mario, along with many other men, when they find out about an unplanned pregnancy, they start to feel anxious, threatened, and literally in danger. Their mind is not prepared for that scenario. They don't feel that they have the tools to deal with such a responsibility. And they, most of the times, are not taught to recognize feelings or empathy toward any kind of situation that requires them to show their emotion. Thus, they are pretty much trapped and driven toward triggering the fight or flight response, filling their heads with stress hormones, which in turn makes them prone to do any kind of reckless or stupid behavior. What happened to Mario's side of the story? Let's move to Mario's way of facing the challenge. First of all, Mario, as we know by the background, didn't have too much tools to deal with the situation in terms of emotional intelligence or problem solving experience. He had grown as a spoiled child, having access to many material things, not being pushed to earn almost anything in his life, being ignored on what he felt almost in every stage of his life, and also being minimized for not knowing what he wanted, leading him to throw his life into drugs, lousy jobs that didn't require mental effort, and developing a storytelling ability to attract women without compromising with them, but just growing his ego to feel he was worthy. Additionally, he had an attitude of not worrying about social approval for anything he was doing. All these behaviors triggered inside him a desire to have an escape of such a burden and build-up of emotions that nobody cared about. After that exhausting internal battle in his head about what could be the best thing to do, if he should stay with Betty and support her and go on with the pregnancy, or ask her to terminate the pregnancy and then disappear from Betty's life. He decided that he needed a lot of help. He realized he only really had one choice in terms of who he could approach to discuss these emotional issues. His more stable and mature cousin, who was his only sane option, sort of thing. He was his only chance to ask for help, to be listened to, and to try to figure out the best way out of this dilemma. Liam, Mario's cousin, turned out to be just what Mario needed in terms of advice. He was a successful entrepreneur. He designed a car wash service made for every busy individual. His business practically solved every issue about not having time or luck to find a decent car wash service nearby. As he had several employees that worked for him, they work on call from every major company when needed. He was also married and had a beautiful young daughter of around 3 years old. Therefore, he knew the responsibility of having to provide for a family. Mario told Liam that he was very worried, anxious, angry, and with a really bad insomnia problem since Betty dropped the news on him. He explained that he loved Betty very much and valued her for the stability and drive that she brought to his life. However, he explained that everything was turning out great for him. He was finally even taking back his academic background, finishing high school and applying for a major in systems engineering. Unfortunately, the news about having a baby threw him on the floor for his dreams. In addition to not feeling capable, responsible, and mature enough to face this kind of responsibility, he thought that this kind of major event was not the best timing in terms of how his life was developing. As explained before, all these reactions were triggered due to a poor and self depreciating upbringing that he had suffered from his parents in terms of love, attention, and understanding. Therefore, one might think that this behavior and reactions could be justified. Liam listened to him closely, as he was just so eager to spit everything out from his mouth and express the most terrifying and incredible scenarios from the news. After he finished all the tragic scenarios and let his feelings out, Liam began to talk. Look, Mario, I understand your situation. I also know my uncle. Therefore, I think I know your story, and maybe I can even understand some of your fear, anxiety, frustration, and anger. However, let me show a more real scenario in my view, as well as what could happen. But first, I want you to help me answering this question. What do you want in terms of your relation with, with Betty? What do you see in her that helps you feel more secure about you? What are the things that you don't like in her? Are they tolerable? Do you know her family? What about your in laws? Do you think they will accept you, or will they make your life miserable? He even closed his eyes for a moment, and after doing those breathing exercises, he could begin answering Liam's question, as he was feeling extremely anxious. Okay, Liam, first question. Betty has been a lifesaver for me. I was at the point of my life where I practically fell like rock bottom. I was consuming more and more drugs. Didn't see anything worthy in my life. My parents, as you know, have always been self absorbed and never paid attention to me. My job was boring and monotonous, and I just failed again in my last missing subject to be able to obtain my high school diploma. So that night, I just felt empty, lost, and I just felt that every attempt to get out from the emotional hole was a failure. My father's word resonated in my head again and again, calling me an emotional wreck, a shame for his name, etc. In addition to that, I started to have suicidal thoughts because from every angle I wanted to see in my life, I couldn't justify my existence, or if I have something to try for. My social circle was very toxic. They were friends that also consumed drugs. I felt that they were friends with me because of my parents and all the material stuff I have, but not one of them really valued me for who I was. the only thing in my life was exercise, swimming. It was the only place, the only moment and time where I really felt good and worthy. But I was even beginning to leave this practice forgotten and was performing less and less frequently due to my toxic friends and the peer pressure of being high in order to enjoy life. Plus, it was also a quicker way to feel something, literally speaking. How did Betty and Mario's time off allow them to process the emotion? These are the insightful tips and practical things that you can start doing once you have read the whole story. Let's start with women and dealing with time off. Women, as we have heard, based on story and evolution, usually process their pain or emotional issues in a more personal way. However, in general, as every event of life, it will all depend on the maturity level and emotional pain that they have within. However, one thing is clear: women that have been rejected, such as Betty in our story, have their emotions readily available due to early conditioning that predispose them to feel that they are not good enough. Usually, they can take a victim mode behavior and luckily rely on a strong network of social support that allows them to get out from there. Depending on what kind of advice they look for, they tend to process much better their emotions, such as our story. Just a few days after the disagreement between Betty and Mario, Betty started to look for a reliable source to talk about the issue. That's another marked trait of the gender. They usually look for someone to talk with, be listened to, and express their feelings to start processing the pain. Now, how do men deal with difficult times? Men, on the other side, as they are wired differently biologically and emotionally, tend to deal with emotional issues as well as usually by doing what they learned through history and evolution, isolating themselves, physically taking out the stress, or sadly, by being driven to take something to numb the pain, which can either be a stimulant drug, alcohol, or meaningless sex, adventure to raise their ego. They just try to avoid the pain, trying not to deal with the situation. Unless they have had this type of experience several times and being able to see things from a more mature point of view, they will recur to speaking with someone. And even if they do it, they will tend to take more time than women, as they are also more prone to be ego attached and being conditioned to suck up their emotions and deal with the problems as a man, swallowing everything. Moreover, the social network they rely on usually is less reliable in terms of maturity and smaller in terms of the number of people they can refer to. What's happening inside many of us as women and men in terms of our biology? Biologically, women tend to feel more overwhelmed by hormones of stress. The levels of cortisol, if they are not pregnant, tend to go up faster than in men. However, when women are pregnant, a protective response of the body is to have already higher levels of cortisol than usual. This doesn't mean they can't take up more stress. This biological difference is justified by the protection that the fetus should have from this stress hormone. High levels of cortisol may be damaging for the development of the fetus in terms of his or her immune response, mood disorders in adulthood, and it also has been documented that stress on early pregnancy may produce a lower cognitive development for the fetus. Being said that, we also can add that the cortisol levels triggered from a stress response produce a fight or flight response as adrenaline levels that start increasing. However, if we remember our story, Betty's first reaction was not to run away. On the contrary, she wanted to stay and discuss the issue the day she said to Mario she was pregnant, even if, after all, she ended up running away. That had much to do with Mario's panic response and the proposal to end the pregnancy. Men tend to react aggressively. They either yell, hit something, or in the worst case, they hit their partner, which of course is not a justification for that behavior, or another type of reaction, which is what Mario did. Just leave without any explanation or reason. This has to do with a biological component that men have of taking more time to lower cortisol and adrenaline levels until they find an outlet, which is sometimes, sadly, yelling, hitting, or leaving. It usually has to be a physical way to release that number of hormones. Men isolate in the cave to process emotions. An evolutionary component of their response to conflict is to isolate. However, they tend to take less time to forgive or understand the situation, although they usually are not good with coping with the source of the conflict. Therefore, there is a high possibility that if they talk about the situation without processing the issue, they might explode again. This also has a lot to do with the way most men are educated. They are never presented with an opportunity to express their feelings or even recognize them, as they are undervalued, criticized, and their masculinity is questioned every time they feel or try to express an emotion. In most cases, gender may also condition the interpretation of a regulated cortisol response. Previous work within the current sample has shown that while depressed women have lower cortisol levels during discussions of conflict and delayed post discussion recovery, depressed men have higher cortisol levels both before and after the discussion. Lack of attention is a stereotype of the male role. This is the key component of many male problems related to how they handle the emotions. Since early childhood, men have a usually higher lack of attention as they are perceived to be more independent, strong, and able to cope with difficulties. This is also a very good feature of why Mario reacted in that way. If we remember his background of not being given the attention he needed, he also was compensated with material or economical possessions to justify or cover the lack of attention his parents gave him. It is not uncommon to hear men statistically have more tendency towards suicide due to the lack of attention and social interaction and isolation that they have. Since they are growing up they are taught to hide their feelings, so they are not bullied. A famous phrase we have all heard is, "Be strong, you are a man," or "Men don't cry." All those conditioning thoughts and expressions are being integrated in men's psyche, and when they grow, they are the fallback program that they have to rely on. Therefore, it is not unexpected that men have a very difficult time to speak of their emotions, and when they do, it is not easy to find someone they can trust or have good emotional guidance. This is the end of the extract from chapter 2 of the book Cultivating a New Generation. If the story resonated with you and you want to go deeper into the science of why men and women react differently, according to the science, in terms of your epigenetic, in terms of your background, and socially, please visit Amazon or Barnes& Noble and look for the title Cultivating a New Generation. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll listen to each other on the next episode. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode and integrating with this community to cultivate more awareness and consciousness in your inner health, to create a new generation of humans. If you want more tools to grow your inner health with science and spirituality merge, visit www.davidortegab.com. Remember that you can subscribe to become a premium member and receive plenty of benefits in all 5 areas of your life: nutrition, metabolism, emotional resilience, consciousness, and abundance, for as low as $1 daily if you pay monthly, or 82 cents if you decide to pay it annually. Now is the time to take advantage for these special prices and upgrade your life to how you dream to be.